Okay, welcome everyone to this final council meeting of 2024. Can I start by thanking everyone for their participation and positive energy that they've brought to the meetings this year in 2024. And there's been quite a lot come across the table, and a lot has been achieved through these meetings and generally through council. So huge thanks to Chief Executive Darren Edwards, the senior leadership team, Democracy Services who run these meetings so well, and to elected members who participate. Also thanks to the public who have come along and inputted into these meetings throughout the year. I'll just start with the council blessing. Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana I ngā take ki mua ia mātou aroaro. E pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara hua pai mōna hapori e mahi ne mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa ki a whaihua ki a tōtika tā mātou mahi. Mata maia te tira whakamua me te hihiri. Ka taia te arahi I roto I te kotahitanga me te aroha. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. And I'd like to acknowledge Korodonta Maipi, who gifted us that council blessing and who recently retired from service as a kaumātua to this council. Though I'm sure he'll still be around. He's already identified 2 or 3 things which he needs to be at. So, but he certainly he deserves a bit of a break from his extensive responsibilities, and his service has been over decades. I think there were 4 or 5 mayors who acknowledged his support. So, a huge thank you to him for his dedication and his service. Apologies. Well, I note that the Deputy Mayor is online, and I have an apology from Cam Butler. Do I have any further apologies? So I think as long as they're online, we don't have to record an apology. So we have one apology today from Cam Butler. Would somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Warwick, seconded by Councillor Coe. All in favour? Aye, that's carried. Any declarations of interest? Nothing under 5 or 6. Public speaking time. We have today, I was going to have this under delegations, but that doesn't seem to be in the report. We have Mary Potter Hospice who've come today. No, that's not Mary Potter Hospice. They're not here. Okay. So members' business, any leaves of absence can be communicated to the Mayor's office. No matters of an urgent nature.
Steve Hollett is here. Apologies. I did put him next to Mary Potter.
All right, yes, Steve Hollett. We'll go back, we'll backtrack. Public speaking time. We actually do have Steve Hollett who's come to speak to us about bollards at Waimanu Lagoons. Welcome, Steve. If you'd like to take a seat so that you can speak into the microphone, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll stick to my script in case I start wandering off. I'm Steve Hollett. I live at 182 to Terry Street, Waikanae Beach, next to the Waimanu Lagoons Reserve. I wish to speak to agenda item 10.2, specifically the request for more bollards in the Waimanu Lagoons Reserve. I'm also the acting chair of the Waimanu Lagoons Focus Group. This group was set up by Council as a consequence of implementing the Waimanu Lagoons Management Plan, itself being a requirement of the Reserves Act. The focus group currently has 3 vacancies, one being a community board rep, which the community board chairman has chosen to leave vacant. The other 2 vacancies are for members of the wider community and are about to be advertised by Gareth Eloff, the KCDC Manager, Parks, Open Space and Environment. At the 30th of October meeting of the focus group, Gareth advised that the damaged grassy areas near the weir structure were subject of an assessment by an engineering firm, Mills Albert, and that he was expecting a proposal to refurbish the damaged area and make them more suitable for parking, potentially including a product such as GeoWeb. I understand GeoWeb would provide strength and would stabilise the affected grass areas. The focus group was encouraged by this, as the applicable grass areas are used frequently for parking by minivans loaded with elderly rest home residents and private cars with disabled folks. In such cases, the elderly or disabled folks are able to enjoy the view of the lagoon without having to leave their vehicles. On the 3rd of December, I received an email from Gareth advising me and the focus group that a service request had been received to install bollards in those same grassy areas and asking for any concerns he should be aware of. This news was totally unexpected and quite a shock. This service request was apparently in response to a request from the community board following up on a submission from a member of the public. It's only thanks to this agenda of this meeting that I discovered the reason for the request for the bollards seems to be to protect grass edges. In the absence of the details of the request for bollards, the current members of the focus group can see no justification for the expense of adding bollards that effectively removes the finest parking spots for vehicles with elderly or disabled people, especially noting that council have an engineering proposal being developed by Mills Albert to refurbish the same damaged grassed areas. Accordingly, it's requested when you are considering this particular agenda item, you acknowledge the request and advise the Waikanae Community Board that the damaged grass areas are already subject of an engineering review by council, and you might also consider advising the Community Board that such requests for changes within the Waimanu Lagoons Reserve should include commentary from the focus group. I hope I haven't confused anyone too much.
No, I think that's very clear. So I have a question from Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Hollett, for coming along to speak today. I'm just quickly looking at the Community Board agenda, and I can't remember whether there's actually been any plan of the area that it is proposed to put bollards in. Are you aware exactly where those areas are?
The email I received from Gareth had I don't have it with me, had a map that showed if you're familiar with where the weir is and you drive across the weir and you carry around to the dead end public car park area, there's a couple of spaces there to the left of the road that looks straight out onto the water of the lagoon, and there's some pretty big potholes that have been developing over the last 18 months or so. In those grass areas. That's the only information we've seen. The focus group knew nothing of this until only a week or so ago.
Right, so there's a conflict here between, what you're saying is there's a conflict here between a submission from one supposed member of the public versus a focus group.
Well, there was a course of action that the council had told the focus group they were doing, and then out of the left field, we get this other thing which somebody, for some reason, and as I said, the only reason I can find is the words in the agenda for this meeting, to protect the grass areas. Well,
yes, so
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So what you've also suggested is that there are other ways to actually improve, I suppose, protect or maintain that area other than putting in bollards.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, if I may, it's a unique reserve, and a lot of people come down, as I said before, especially elderly people. I'm surprised the number of these minivans from all the different rest homes around the place that come. They just sit there, and you can hear them cackling and talking and pointing and looking at a little bird life and all the rest of it. But if they're forced to stick to the formed car park, they're just not going to get that.
That's great.
So if I can just have one further question. So if they wanted to take that, take in that view, and there were bollards there, other than being in the car park, they need to park on the road, so that would actually block the road. Is that correct?
Yes, that they would impede the access into the further back car park. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I think in terms of resolving this, probably the best bet would be if the community board and whatever staff are required, and yourselves to actually have a site visit so that we all know when we're pointing at something, we all know what it is that we're pointing at.
By all means.
Yeah.
By all means.
So we'll see if we can arrange to have a site visit. That's probably the best way, and everyone knows exactly what it is we want to do and where we want to do it.
I feel a little, if I can use the word, miffed that the community board chose to take that action when they actually have a seat on the focus group to stop all the miscommunication and misunderstandings anyway. So it's unfortunate this whole thing has blown up to this level.
Yeah, that vacancy's been there for a while, so yeah, they need to address that as well. Cool.
Okay, thanks for your presentation
forward.
today. It's really good to hear the perspective of the group, and I notice our group manager, customer and community is listening intently to what you have to say today so that he can factor that into the investigations that are currently underway. I'll just point to our recommendation in the paper today, which is notes that the request for bollards to protect grass edges at the Waimanu Lagoons Reserve is currently being investigated. And I do know that part of that investigation is the matting to make the area more resilient. So we are in no way today endorsing the installation of bollards. All we're doing is noting that work is underway to address all of these issues that you've raised today. But thank you for bringing that perspective. It's really useful.
Thank you.
And that just reminds me that we did have an apology that came in late from the Waikanae Community Board Chair, Michael Moore. So I'll make sure that this gets forwarded to him so that he knows what you've had to say today. And while I'm on that, I think the apologies were moved by Councillor Warwick, seconded by Councillor Coe. If we add Michael to those apologies as well, all in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Slightly out of order, but I'm sure that will cover that off. Okay. I've been slacking off on changing the nature of the report. So we've been through leaves of absence minutes. So yeah, we're up to the Mayor's report. I know there was a request that I provide a more qualitative report rather than the list of activities that hasn't been actioned as of yet. I do note that this is really historically a way to make the Mayor's calendar transparent so that people know who I've been meeting with and what I've been doing outside of council activities. The activities that are happening within council, aside from these, are clear through agendas, reports and minutes. And I'm always keeping councillors up to date with all of that. So I'll just ask that this be accepted today. And then we move on to reports. 10.1, appointment of electoral officer.
Thank you, through the chair.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Jessica Macman, tōku ingoa. This report asks Council to appoint an electoral officer ahead of the 2025 local body elections as required under the Local Electoral Act. We propose that Council reappoint Dale Ofsosky of Independent Election Services Limited as Council's electoral officer for the reasons outlined in the report. I will take the remainder of the report as read, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Just want to move it.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Handford. Councillor Halliday, did you have a question before we go to right of introduction?
Just point of clarity, to be honest. Number 25, page 8 of the agenda talks to council is required by law to have an electoral officer in place at all times. Could you just clarify what at all times mean? Is that the at all times the duration of the election period, or is it the length of the duration of the trinium?
At all times, so not just for periods of election,
Okay.
all the time.
So with regards to the chat,
So
Dale, sorry,
Yep.
I should know. My apologies. So they've got a, should we say, in regards to filling that role, there's the ability for people to contact that office as part of this process, if you like. Is that correct? And that's included in the budgeting that's been talked to here. Is that right?
yes. I
So someone
need
makes
some
a
clarity.
inquiry during the year, because I know that in the electoral period, there's someone on site physically sitting down here for the duration of that, but I'm picking for the rest of the time, that's not the case. And if there's any inquiries, I'm more than directed to his office, and there's a fee paid for doing that as such, rather than having a member on site, should we say.
So we will have a contract in place with Dale for the duration of the elections period,
Yeah.
and that is what we have put into the report. But we can also contact Dale at any point during the triennium if we need help, for example, with representation reviews. At that point, we'll contact him again and get a new quotes for a new contract, so we can be clear what we actually have to pay for that piece of work, if that makes sense, because we won't know whether that's going to occur. Also, polls or anything like that, we'll just get new quotes.
Fully appreciate that. So it says here, council is required by law to have an electoral officer in place at all times. So I appreciate for bits of work, we'll contract that work out. That'll be an additional cost, no issue with that. But the arrangement we're going to have with Dale and his business is that they are that person that's the electoral officer in place at all times. Is that correct?
That is correct,
Lovely.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Provano.
Yes, thank you. So paragraphs or sections 22 to 24 talk about the costs of these services. Before it was outsourced, what was the cost? Well, I suppose it's a case of how much have the costs increased since they've been outsourced?
I unfortunately don't have the answer to that at hand, so I'd have to get back to you offline to be able to answer that.
Thank you.
The Chief Executive.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. What I might add is that there are costs that aren't expressed, such as all of the costs that we soak up with staff time that you don't get to see. So this report doesn't focus on that, but we'll factor that into it when we come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Great, so that's been moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Handford. Right of introduction.
Yeah, just quickly, we're coming into one of the more interesting elections with a referendum and a new Maori ward. And I've been quite impressed by Dale's ability to answer our curly questions that got thrown at him. He really got it about the result structure last time and the delays and all the rest of it, and they clearly taken that on board. Given the complexity of this next election, you really want somebody who has a really good level of experience, and they do. So yeah, I'm really comfortable nominating Dale for that.
Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, just briefly, fully support Councillor Wilson's comments, and just noting that we've had briefings leading into this, hence the questions the answers you were just talking to there. So we've been quite informed in this space, and Dale's track record I think is pretty good as well, very good with regards to this. And yeah, it's going to be a bit of a curly one potentially, so it's quite good to have that independent aspect to it as well.
Yeah, so this will be a complicated election with the extra element of a referendum. But our district, even though it's quite small, one of the things that was clarified by Dale was that even though it's small in terms of population, it's complex in terms of its governance structure, with 31 elected members, people standing for multiple positions. And so I think the expectation that results are going to come through really quickly is potentially not always going to be realised. So we did have a chat though about how results are communicated and that kind of thing. So I also think that Dale has helped us enormously during the year with our representation reviews, and his advice is always sound and wise. So I'm really pleased that he's available to do this for us once more. Any other comments? Right of reply?
Just say thanks to Jess and Steffi too for putting all this together. They're the liaison people with Dales, and yeah, it all just seems to be working really smoothly. So good
Great.
stuff.
So I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you, Steffi and Jess. Well done. So we now move to 10.2, reports and recommendations from community boards. Starting on page 9 of agendas.
Through you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. We just have a couple of recommendations from the community boards. One from Paraparaumu Community Board regarding Ocean Road parking, and two from Waikanae, one regarding the bollards, which you've already heard this morning, and another one regarding the Waikanae Garden Precinct. So I am happy to direct any questions to their appropriate receptacle.
Yes, I had an email from the chair of the Waikanae Community Board expressing concern that that B2 about the bollards was noting. I think we are noting that there's action already underway. That means that it doesn't require an instruction for action. So I think the fact that B2 is B1 and B2 notes is only because the action has already been implemented. So I'll go down to Councillor Coe. Any questions?
You just the Ocean Road and Blue Gum Road. In fact, I was in attendance at this board meeting for other purposes and listened to the conversation. So, having been a weekly user of the Ocean Road Community Centre in my duties as a Rotarian, I just want to note that actually parking is already an issue there, and I think some of the residents were in particular concerned about the ability for people with disabilities to park close by that facility. And the pressure is coming from the former motel that's been converted into residential units. So I'm a bit concerned that it says that the review will be conducted at a future time if need arises due to increased use. In my view, there's already reason to look at how it's being used and what happens with the overflow parking, and just to make sure there's enough disability parks there. Because a lot of the users of the Ocean Road Community Centre are elderly people. So, yeah, that's all I would say about that. And the doctor's surgery, I think, was also concerned about the ability of people to park close by, because a lot of their patients are elderly. So, yeah, just wondering whether pushing it at some point in the future is going to be dealing with the problem.
Are you suggesting a change to the recommendation that's in front of us today? Back to Councillor Coe, please.
Yeah, look, I think a review sooner rather than later. I wouldn't like to see it just as an open-ended thing that we'll only deal with it when somebody else next makes a complaint about it. I think it's worthy at some time in the short to medium term of a review to make sure that particularly elderly and disabled people are not experiencing difficulty with parking close to either the doctor or the community centre.
Okay, we'll just have a discussion about this. Sean? Mr. Mallon?
Certainly the hall, in terms of provision of additional mobility parks, that's absolutely something. If we had a request from the trust that runs the hall there, we haven't had that feedback from them that there's a lack of those parks. That it wouldn't be something we would need to do a huge amount of work to do. So if they were to contact us and tell us they need more mobility parks closer to that building, then yes. the resolution that went to the board, there was a significant amount of work put in to providing some options for the board, and one of them was to limit the time restricted parking in those parks, and that was primarily to provide for the doctor's surgery. So that was after meeting them on site, and the resolution that went to the board offered that, but also offered ongoing monitoring associated with that. So if there were issues associated with that, then we could certainly step in and review that. But that wasn't supported at the board meeting, and again, we are not aware of any wider issues down there in terms of parking. Yes, that does get full, the hall, when there's an event there, they certainly do spills out. And there's a church on the other side of the road there, so I live just down the road on Ocean Road, so it does get very full. But outside of those hours, there is generally not an issue in terms of available parking down there. So, but we will continue to monitor. Absolutely happy to talk to the hall about the provision of mobility parks.
So how about we just add to B1, or if further requests are received, so that we're not saying that we're only going to conduct a review if the use increases. If we get approached, if we get approached by the community. So I was just finishing my sentence. So if we get approached by the community, then then we can action something, because at the moment it doesn't. It only highlights that if there's increased use, there would be a review. But if we just say, we could even just put a full stop after future time. Glenn, I'll go to you now.
Yeah. So just to clarify, there has been actually requests to the community board regarding disability mobility parking there. So that has come through from the community. It's come from the trust of the community centre. Actually, I was talking to Roy. He came over to me the other day and was talking to me that. So that definitely has come through. The doctors at the meeting and some other residents at the meeting, there was quite a number of people who actually spoke at the meeting, and a number of them did actually bring up that there's an issue with disability parking there. So that has definitely come through already. The main concern of what started was actually the Ocean Motel, which has converted now. It's no longer a motel. It's now turned into long-term housing. And what actually triggered this is they're going to be adding quite a number, or they want to add a number of other units there. None of those will need to have a parking space because it's not it's the type of place it is. And the Ocean Motel is the reason why we changed the 8 parks out there to limited was because it was concerned, and actually the developer of the motel actually supported this to be changed, because the concern is there's no parking for the residents who are going to go in there, so they're going to park at these and park it all up. There was also concern at the Ocean Motel, and the doctors and some of the residents also confirmed this, saying that people were already parking in the community centre car park full time. So residents are parking there, the staff and the doctors are parking there. So there is already a pressure. And I think, anybody who's used that centre would understand on a Saturday morning, it's not just when there's an event there, it's when the beach market's on in summer on a hot day. It's all really bad. It's a bus route. You got buses, you got things there. So there's a number of things there. But what we said is probably as part of any other units being put into what was the Ocean Motel, because of if there's going to be no parking added to them, then it really does need a review, because it's going to even push the parking out issue even worse around there. So that's really, our trigger point would be that. The last one I'll add is the doctors did actually ask at the night for the 2 parks outside of the inn to be included in the time limited parking. We didn't pass that or do that on the night, although we could have. And the reason was that request wasn't part of the engagement with the people. It came from somebody as part of the engagement, so it wasn't actually communicated. So we felt uncomfortable doing it right then and there. We thought it should be better done as a bigger review of the area. And if we don't want to do that, then we'll probably come back in the community board and recommend those parks and change as well. So, yeah.
So I don't think we can solve this today. I don't want to go into the operational nuts and bolts of parking in an Ocean Road. I don't have the paper in front of me from the community board. I think if we just put a full stop after future time, so that the recommendation is notes that a review of the overall parking situation in the area around Ocean Road and Blue Gum Roads can be conducted at a future time. That leaves us open to further action on this. And I think staff have heard about the concerns. There's already been a paper around this. So I'd like to park this conversation for now and just note that we're going to do further work on it. So any questions about the other recommendations? Councillor Privanoff?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I just want to actually follow up with the comments made by the chair of the Waikanae Community Board to extend that to, so here we're talking about the recommendations, and I'm talking specifically about A2 and B3. So they're on page 9. So this is where the Community Board requests protection of the Waikanae Garden Precinct in the Waikanae Beach area. These recommendations came as a result of a presentation from a group that's been set up to look at a plan change, and I'm just wondering whether or not the fact that these are noted means that work is underway to actually look at these, or what is the situation, please?
So B3 is actually a request.
Okay.
So I've met with that group and gone over their issues and the options in terms of future planning, and I've been in conversations with staff about that.
Okay.
And that's where the request comes from. So that what B3 is basically saying that that we won't necessarily wait for the legislation to be passed. We're considering what steps we can put in place ahead of that time in anticipation of any future council decisions.
Thank you. So as
Yeah.
I think we are aware that it's probably going to be at least 2 years before any legislation is passed on this matter.
At the moment, it's
Yes.
scheduled for July next year, from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
But there's nothing stopping us still looking at what we can do ahead of that time. Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, it's more of a statement than a question. I'm just a little bit concerned, the comments from the person that came in from the Waikanae group down at the beach. There's a position there on their committee for a community board member, and it's not filled. So I just want to flag that should be filled. And we wouldn't have this problem, potentially, if that had been the case, and that sort of stuff. So if the Waikanae Community Board can take that on board, would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That's important.
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Sorry, as a
Sounds
community
good.
board chair, I do want to stand up for community boards here. Sorry, the community board chair is not here to defend himself. That could have easily been taken offline. I think that'd be more appropriate than raising it in a public meeting. There may be very good reasons why the community board doesn't have an appointment on that meeting, and we may not be party to those reasons, and they aren't here to explain themselves. So could we kind of just dial back from that?
Sure, and
From
that's
that
noted
approach.
and
Thank
accepted.
you.
That point of order is accepted. It's not up to us to give instructions to other elected members.
No troubles at all,
I
madam.
do
I'll reword
also
that.
note that Waikanae has a list of appointments as long as your arm, as Councillor Privanoff would well know, having sat on quite a lot of them. So, but I think we all heard the public speaker today, and we all heard Councillor Wilson suggesting that it might be a good idea for the community board to consider that. At the end of the day, it's up to community boards to set their own appointments.
Certainly, Madam Chair. It was already in the public arena. That's why I'm just emphasised the point. But I do take on board what you're saying, Pete, because I was going to start that I might be considered to be a bit out of line with regards to that request and that sort of stuff. But it was in the public arena. That's just why I followed up on it.
Great, thank you. Who's next? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just in term, two things actually. That Ocean Road, as a person who's generally not on time for meetings, you get there and there is no parking anywhere. It's all full at that stage. So that's some of the random parking that you see is really interesting. I'm one of the random parkers. So the but in terms of that Waikanae, the Waikanae Garden Precinct, I'm already aware that our people have been talking to the people. There is a proposal to have a private plan change, to put forward a private plan change. And so the hope was that discussions, rather than having to go down the private plan change path, that discussions with our staff might be able to mediate that process. So it's not a contentious process. It's not a us versus them situation. I think we're all on the same page. It's just that it's everybody versus a piece of legislation that we weren't that comfortable having to sign off on, and this is a specific part of it. So I'm quite happy that where this is going, and I'm happy that the conversations are taking place. So I think we're heading in the right direction. That's my only comment. And I will just very quickly say the Waikanae Community Board is probably not that much different, that there are a huge number of appointments, and you can't always get somebody to put their hand up for them because they can take a lot of time. And so there are vacancies, and most community boards have probably got a vacancy or two, but it's up to the community board.
Councillor Coffin.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. Just with respect to B3, that request there, yeah, it's just a comment, but look, it's a problem we've had with the fast track consenting process, the intensification the government have forced down, and it's been a threat to the garden circle. And the developer has actually pulled down one of my masterpieces of the early 80s, and it hurts. And he's going to put a whole lot of boxes there. And I think that as soon as we get this urban panel in, the better. But I have been talking to the residents there, and we do have to do something about it. Thank you.
Would you like to move these recommendations, and that could be your right
Well,
of introduction?
I'd love to move them. Thank you.
Yeah, so B1 through B3. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spires?
Oh, thank you.
Right. Do you have anything to add to your right of
No, I
introduction?
think that's, I've ranted on enough. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else want to contribute or make any comments? We've had a few comments already. This part of our agendas is always a little bit fluid. So, but it's been a good discussion. Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Look, just wanted to just reinforce that it's great that the council officers are working in the area of the garden precinct and the beach precinct protection. I appreciate that it was taken out through PC2. This is something I've pushed for a while. Just highlighting the fact that the same happened for Otaki Beach, and the same happened down Ramati Way as well, and would love to see that. And I know that this piece of work will be factoring in those potentially as well from a council officer's perspective, but appreciating that private plan change would more than likely be specific to this as such.
Great. Anybody else want to make a comment? Right of reply? Waived? So this is, we're moving B1 through B3 on page 9. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So the next item, I want us to be able to kind of take our time over if we need to. And I'm aware that some people came in and had to sit down rather more quickly than they're used to. I note that Councillor Wilson has not yet got his coffee from Novella. So we want to make sure that everybody remains happy for the duration of the meeting. So we'll take a little bit of an early break today, and then we'll come back for the performance report.